Welcome to the stream. I'm your host, Dave Knapp, man on the Manjaro. That's why I'm here. You are on the pen. Wegovy Saxenda, Victoza Trulicity, Manjaro Zepbound, that pen. We've got so much going on today. So much going on in the world of GLP-1. Sometimes the weekly dose is just simply not enough. Sometimes we need a daily dose. We got all sorts of stuff going on today. The Senate confirmation hearings for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been nominated to potentially become the next Secretary of Health and Human Services. Of course, we enjoyed most of that stream together as a community. The next thing we've got going on is a breaking news update in the Outsourcing Facilities Association trial with the FDA and Eli Lilly. We're going to get into that. And we've got some very interesting news, a blog article that we posted over at onthepen.com today in regards to a 503B pharmacy that is facing some FDA violations. We're going to get into that as well. But before we do, I would just like to encourage you to hit that like, hit that bell, hit the subscribe button so you get notifications every time that we go live on this channel, which is quite often lately because the news just keeps flowing. I want to say hello to Thelma, Mrs. Bell, Jazzy, Debbie, Melissa, Tay, Sherry, Michael, Alonda, Covert. Thank you for joining. Everyone who's in the comments today, thank you. And thank you for those who are joining across other platforms as well. Please, I would like to encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow wherever you're watching so that you can get updates as they happen here. It's constant. It's constant. Is it not? Is it not? We're going to get into some breaking news on the OFA Outsourcing Facilities Association trial with the FDA. Some filings finally happened. We've finally got an update for you on what's going on in that case. And so we're going to get into it. What we saw today was basically a amended complaint in this lawsuit filed by the Outsourcing Facilities Association, really going after the FDA's authority to unilaterally end the shortage of tirzepatide without doing their due diligence. In their opinion, of course, what they're alleging in this lawsuit has a lot to do with the fact that most of the evidence presented to the court in defense of ending the tirzepatide shortage was directly from Eli Lilly, who may have a conflict of interest in reporting accurate information to the FDA. So the OFA is challenging that authority, and the court's also motioning officially for a preliminary injunction. And so I just want to get into a little bit about what that means, what happens next, what we're looking for sort of moving forward in this trial. So we've got the Outsourcing Facility Association's filings, again, sort of updating their complaint and filing for an injunction. So February 18th, the FDA's response to the injunction motion is due. That's 3 weeks from the filing of the motion. On the 25th, a week later, the OFA will have 1 week to respond to whatever the FDA files. Now, no hearing is scheduled yet, meaning the judge can rule any time after February 25th. The judge basically has two options here. Rule on the injunction immediately. This would decide whether compound tirzepatide can continue during the trial, or two, ask for more arguments or more evidence, which could delay the ruling further. Now, this is critical because the judge's decision on the injunction will signal how he's leaning in the overall case. If he grants the injunction, this could be a good sign for compounding, as it means he sees merit in the OFA's case. If he denies the injunction, that doesn't kill the case, but it makes it harder for compounding to continue during the lawsuit. Now, I will caveat all of this by saying one of the things that we've learned from the Outsourcing Facilities, from the Alliance for Pharmacy Compounding, who reached out last week for more clarity from the FDA, is that the FDA did signal that it's not their intention to enforce anything for the duration of this trial. So why then move for this motion on the OFA's behalf? I think it's because you always want to make sure that you get those legal assurances that you're not going to face enforcement during this trial. So I think you don't necessarily take the person or the entity that you're suing at their word. You want some legal protection around that. So the preliminary injunction would be basically a court order that would stay any enforcement against compounders for the duration of this trial. That's what makes what's happening with this preliminary injunction important. But we have heard, again, this was reported from Scott Bruner, who's the CEO of the Alliance of Pharmacy Compounding, the APC. And he said that they received communication from the FDA that it was not their intent to enforce anything against compounding, regardless of what happens. But whatever happens with this preliminary injunction would sort of solidify that legally, if that makes sense. So that's sort of where that sits in terms of what happens to compounding for the duration of this trial. So obviously the next question is what comes next. Well, after the injunction ruling, expect motions for summary judgment where both sides will ask the judge to decide the case without a full trial. This could speed up or drag out the case depending on how the judge rules. Now, it could be that the OFA wants to drag this out. We'll have to see, but it's more than likely you'll see the FDA and Eli Lilly move for a summary judgment. And for you, what is the bottom line? If you rely on compound, you want this thing to last as long as humanly possible, because if the FDA has signaled that they're not going to do any enforcement during this trial, the longer it lasts, the better it is for you. The next big date, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, is February 18th, but a ruling could happen anytime after the 25th because the OFA will then have a week to respond after that February 18th. So these are sort of some of the tentative dates that we're looking at here. The judge's decision on the injunction will be a huge indicator in what the outcome of this will be. And whatever the outcome, we can be certain that this is going to end up in an appeals court. And so we're talking then at that point, what does the FDA decide to do for the duration of the appeals process? Will they put a moratorium on enforcing anything against compounders during a potential appeals process? That's why this is all very, very important to follow. Of course, all of this on the heels of the news today, where we had Robert F. Kennedy Jr. sitting in front of the Senate committee as he is a nominee for running this Health and Human Services Department as the Secretary of HHS. It looks more and more likely that is an inevitability. So how does that play into all of this will be something very interesting to watch as well. Of course, they intend on appointing Dr. Martin Makary to lead up the FDA, who is the Chief Medical Officer of Sesame Telehealth, right? So Sesame Telehealth offers compounded medications, anti-obesity medications, branded medications. He's uniquely familiar with what's going on here, where the outgoing administration to a lesser extent, right? This guy has up close and personal experience with exactly what's going on in this landscape of accessibility to GLP-1s and anti-obesity medication in general. So all of it shaping up to be just a very interesting time in the news for compounded medications. Now, this is fascinating because yesterday, Endpoints released an article about something that's very interesting, and we followed up on it and got some more information today. So essentially, the FDA has issued a warning letter to ProRx LLC outlining a series of violations that suggest that the outsourcing this is a 503B pharmacy, has been operating well outside the bounds of regulatory compliance. Inspectors documented contaminated, sterile environments, mislabeled drug products, and a failure to properly report adverse events. A list of infractions that ultimately led to the company ceasing sterile production in August of 2024, before later signaling at the end of November 2024 its intent to resume operations. So then they signal their intent to resume operations in late November, Then December 20th, which was all sorts of news was happening around then. Of course, the 19th, you had the FDA doubled down on the tirzepatide shortage. You also had the FDA granting the indication for tirzepatide for sleep apnea at that time. A lot of things were happening at the time. This sort of slid under the radar. The FDA released a letter dated the 20th of December 2024 and outlined the inspection over the summer that turned up flying insects in sterile areas, inadequate gowning procedures, and a lack of documented protocols to prevent microbial contamination. Among the flagged products were compounded semaglutide and tirzepatide, two medications at the center of this ongoing regulatory battle over compounding access. The FDA warning arrives. Now, this is exclusive to On the Pen. This is something that we received last night. The FDA's warning arrives just as Red Rock Pharmacy, which is a huge player in the compounding space. Many of you, even within the comments of this video, have probably received medication from Red Rock. Red Rock Pharmacy sent out a letter to their prescribers alleging that a former employee of Red Rock had been reaching out to Red Rock customers to promote this compounded semaglutide and tirzepatide on behalf of this infractioned 503B Pro RX, basically trying to siphon off Red Rock customers to this Pro RX, which is under all of this scrutiny from the FDA right now. So Red Rock sort of throwing a red flag to their providers, prescribers, to their patient, their client network, saying, hey, look out for this, because we've got some concerns, not only with the news that's dropped from the FDA on the Pro RX, but also sort of concerns with their licensing status and their relationship with Perfect RX and Smart Scripts, that under federal law are allegedly not supposed to be producing drugs for office and use in bulk, the way a 503B outsourcing facilities like Pro RX would. So interesting stuff. I'm still working to see if we're able to share that with you, but there's a whole article up at On the Pen about this. But it's crazy. This facility's lack of adequate labeling practices also made the list. The agency flagged missing details such as the active ingredients, dosage instructions, adverse events, and then going so far as to flag that the API, the sourced ingredient going in their compound medications, were not from FDA approved sources. Now, that's one of the underpinnings of 503B pharmacies, and why and On the Pen, we're big advocates of 503B pharmacies, because 503B pharmacies have to use active pharmaceutical ingredients that come from FDA registered facilities. They can't just get it anywhere overseas. They have to be registered with the FDA. And so if this was a 503B that was sourcing API from somewhere other than an FDA registered facility, they're completely undermining the whole purpose, intent, and safety mechanisms built into the 503B infrastructure. So there's so much going on in the world of compounding right now that, requires attention and vigilance. And one of the folks in the chat brings up the Usha pharmacy. Of course, a whole separate thing going on there, but Usha pharmacy was a 503, I believe they could purported to be a 503A pharmacy. Maybe it was fine. I'm not super well versed in this, but essentially they were doling out compounded scripts without having allegedly a current compound pharmacy, sterile compound pharmacy license within the state of Florida, and to this point have not been able to produce assurances to the telehealth companies that were using them that they are indeed a registered sterile compound pharmacy. So as Neo Queen points out, what a debacle. Absolutely. It is so important for the telehealth companies, for you to be working with a telehealth company that is reputable, that is doing the due diligence on the back end of this stuff, because not all of these sources of these medications are created equal. And this is 503B. Thankfully, the FDA oversight is doing what the FDA oversight is supposed to do. This is what we've been arguing for some time. People say, well, the compound pharmacies, they're just operating however they want to. Well, 503A pharmacies are governed by their state boards of pharmacy, but 503B pharmacies, like the one we're talking about, who faced all these violations, they are under the thumbs of the FDA. And this is exactly why, so that the FDA can actually step in and do the inspections, hold people accountable. And so this is very, very interesting development. So we'll continue to follow the OSHA situation in Florida. Hopefully we can gather more information on that one. Obviously, this one making its way to endpoints, and we're building off that with the information from Red Rock. So all of this available at onthepen.com. The website's been revamped. I would love it if you would take a trip over to onthepen.com and sign up for email alerts. Make sure you download the podcast, do all the things over there. But so much breaking news today. I hope that you'll hit the thumbs up button. I hope that you'll share this somewhere where people get and exchange information about this stuff, your Facebook groups, your Reddit forums. This is huge news and something to watch out for. You want to, again, make sure you're working with reputable compound pharmacies when you get that medication, and it starts with working with reputable telehealth companies. Of course, we're partnered with Roe here at On the Pen. Roe is the sponsor of our podcast, and we appreciate them. But whoever you're using, make sure that you are doing your due diligence there. If you have any questions in the comments, I will take a few questions before we pop off. Just wanted to get you all updated on all of the things today. Just so much news, and I know that you've come to expect that you will get that in a accurate and timely manner from On the Pen and onthepen.com. But I thank you for joining me today. I really, really, really appreciate the platform that you all have given me as we continue to advocate for increased accessibility, but not at the expense, not ever at the expense of safety, purity, and the integrity of the medication that you're injecting into your body. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what we do at On the Pen. And please, if you are one of the folks who follows On the Pen here on YouTube but is not subscribed, take a moment, hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you on